I was in Trafalgar Square for the riots. The local Labour council, where I was a student, had laid on free buses to go and protest. And it was a hell of a riot. And the funny thing is, I don't know if I said this before, but when we returned to the bus, my mate and I were the only two who weren't carrying looted brown goods. Um,
Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of the Audiophiles. And as stated, it's Friday, so that means it is viewer request day here at the office. And we are going to be endeavoring to listen to a song recommended by one of you out there in the listening audience. To be specific, this was recommended by Neil Smithy on our Los Campesinos video. And well, I don't think, John, you're not familiar with this band that we've talked about or this artist that we've talked about, are you?
Slightly, slightly. We went through the list and I said, "Oh, yeah, I want to check this out." I
Okay.
have listened to a previous album many moons ago, and I don't remember much about it, but I do know I listened to it. That's about
Okay. Well, to be fair, you have as scant as your experience is with this artist, I have even less. So this was a pretty much a new experience for both of us giving this song a listen. But the artist in question is Frank Turner. And what I have for you today, and that I've already given a listen to, is a live performance of his song Sons of Liberty. So I would, as well as Neil, I suppose, would like you to go off and give this a listen. Come back and let us know what you make of it.
will do.
Excellent.
This song's called Sons of Liberty. Once an honest man could go from sunrise to set without encountering agents of his state or government. But a sorry cloud of tyranny has fallen across the land, brought on by the hollow men who did not understand that for centuries our forefathers have fought and died to keep themselves unto themselves, to fight the rising tide. That if in the smallest battles we surrender to the state, we enter in a darkness whence we never shall escape. And the rage ends of our lives to possess, know our souls to drag us down, will resist. Once I left.
Interesting start. Yeah, it's got that sort of folksy feel to it, which is also kind of semi, I don't know, marching, not militaristic, but you know what I mean. Sort of rousing the masses, for want of a better word. It's really interesting. I was catching some of the words there. So it's strange because what he's singing about, I kind of associate with more of an American sort of protest against the state. Um, you don't really hear voices against government intrusion on our lives that much in this country. I mean, I guess you do, but it's not as strong as it is maybe across the pond. I heard reference obviously to tyranny and the state, but also the Hollow Men, which I believe is a T.S. Eliot poem. Interesting. Yeah, it's got a sound to it that kind of reminds me. It's not my sort of music that I'd normally listen to. It kind of reminds me of like the Levelers, something like that. that's the kind of feel to it. Anyway, right, let's just start the next verse. So let's just go back a sec.
Drag us down, we'll resist. But Tyler led the people in 1381 to meet the King of Smithfield and issue this demand: that Winchester should be the only law across the land, the law of old King Alfred's time, of free and honest men. Cause the people then they understood what we have since forgot, that government will only work for its own benefit. And I'd rather stand and make it against the elements alone than give the Harlem men the right to enter in my own. When they raise their hands up, our lives to possess, know our souls to drag us down, we'll resist.
This little bit here, I mean, you're expecting some fiddles as well. It kind of feels Irish. That's my limited knowledge, but it does.
Alright, we're gonna sing the end of this one together.
Hang on a minute. Where's he been hiding? Because there definitely wasn't two drummers at the start. You know the rule. Two drummers is always a win. Cool.
The words are: stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for what you own. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for your homes. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for what you own. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for your homes. That's it. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for what you own. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for your homes. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for what you own. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for your homes. Everybody, stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for what you own. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for your homes. So if ever a man should ask you for your business or your name, tell him to go and fuck himself. Tell his friends to do the same. Cause a man who traded his liberty for a safe and dreamless sleep doesn't deserve the both of them, and neither shall he keep. Thanks very much. I very nearly...
But at the end, I'll ask you for was it your name, your business? Tell him to go fuck himself. Sounds very sovereign citizen. I don't know what this was, but that's hilarious. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. It was all very pleasant at the start, but when it sort of kicked in after that instrumental bit and the two drummers, that sounded great. And then him telling everyone to sing along, that's proper sort of hairs on the back of your neck going up sort of moment. That was really cool. Clearly the crowd were really engaged as well, which is awesome to see. It really is. Shepherd's Bush Empire looked really cool as well. Yeah, Excellent. Yeah, this it's that sort of brand of folky music that I'm not as familiar with as something like, for want of a better word, Nick Drake and that sort of stuff, that sort of gentle folk music. Um, but this, yeah, it was a really good performance live, obviously. Great sounds to the band. Um, and he's got a sort of bee in his bonnet about the state, which you don't really hear in this country much. We're really more apathy than uprising, I guess. He did mention Wat Tyler. My history is terrible, but that's a long time ago, isn't it? Cool. Well, clearly there's a huge amount of story to this, so we'll have to find out more. Let's go back and chat it up with Andy.
All right, you're back.
Mhm.
I gotta say, before we get into this, it's really interesting for me as a Yank to listen to a song called "Sons of Liberty" by a British musician. We probably should have done this one for Fourth of July. Now that I look back on it, but what did you make of this? Of course, that would garner that eye roll. What did you make of this track, John, and the performance, I should say?
Yeah. So, yeah, just to say, I have listened to his album Tape Deck Heart, which I think gained pretty good traction in this country. I'm sure of it. And what I do remember is that a he's proficient with the acoustic guitar. That's the one thing I do remember about him. And yeah, so the song starts with his acoustic guitar, backed by the band, and his sort of sing-song delivery sort of lends to a sort of rabble-rousing folk ditty that has that sort of rural militia on the move feel. Perhaps the group have just stopped at a watermill on their march towards Westminster, and while they cool their feet in the river, Frank grabs his guitar to raise their spirits for the next leg of the march onwards. So yeah, that's the sort of image I had in my mind. Sort of, a constable landscape and loads of people ripping the thatch off a cottage or whatever as they're going through. So he rattles off the lyrics at a fair lick in this first verse. So I'm only catching snippets, but I'm getting impressions from it. It was talking about once an honest man, it starts off, and then he mentions agents of the government, cloud of tyranny, definitely tyranny, hollow men, go back to that in a sec, and something about surrender to the state. So yeah, really interesting stuff. Just to say, the hollow men made me think T.S. Eliot poem. And it's a long time since I've read Eliot, but that's the one that ends. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang but a whimper. His most famous lines, which he hated apparently, but he bloody wrote them, so I don't know what he's moaning about. Anyway, of course he's not moaning anymore; he's dead. But anyway, so as you sort of alluded to there in your intro, maybe it's just me, but I do feel this sort of protest and the title as well, as you said, against state intrusion is so much more got a Yankee feel to it. It's definitely widespread in America than Britain. Granted, there is more now here than before, but these voices of dissent are really lumped in with conspiracy theories, nutcases that only get attraction because of social media. So they're in with the 5G and the anti-vaxxers and maybe the flat earthers as well. So they're not really taken seriously in this country.
Unfortunately, historically, there's a lot of reverence from Americans for this kind of stuff. But you are right; there is this appropriation of this kind of sentiment that has been absorbed by, let's just say, the farther right of the political spectrum here in the United States.
Yeah, politics of this is nuanced in our country as well as yours, but I mean, from my point of view, it's kind of the sort of appropriation of the founding fathers who were actually fighting against things like absurd taxation, etc.
Yeah.
And then they're making it into the present day, and anyway, don't get me started.
Yeah.
So the next bit, which I think maybe is the chorus because it's repeated again, is easier to digest because he stretches out the words and sort of sings it, which is an interesting take. So you had this um for the verse, and then it's weird how he sort of almost slow it down for the chorus, which is, but I guess it's a more of a flag waving sort of imagery of that chorus. It's only two lines. When they raise their hands up, our lives to possess. I think I've written this down right. Um, know our souls, drag us down, we'll resist. Something like that. With the guitar, the electric guitar and the piano backing sound, it's a lazy comparison, but it's all I've got. It kind of reminds me of the Levelers, especially their early stuff.
Mhm.
It's not my area of expertise, this music, or my go-to genre, but it's pleasant enough. So the next verse, I hear what Tyler led the people, which is really interesting. Now, Peasants' Revolt, my history knowledge of this period is fluffy at best. I think Frank did say the year, but I didn't catch it. I do know that it involved a protest against the poll tax, which gave me flashbacks because many, many, many years later, I was in Trafalgar Square for the riots. The local Labour council where I was a student had laid on free buses to go and protest. And it was a hell of a riot. And the funny thing is, I don't know if I said this before, but when we returned to the bus, my mate and I were the only two who weren't carrying looted brown goods. And I badly needed an hysteria at that point, but it didn't occur to me. I was dodging police horses. But yeah. And then so we're going to the next. So after this, what Tyler? He says something about meeting the king at Smithfield. So this is all about the President's Revolt and Tyler's End, I guess. Winchester laws across the land. Something about the law of old King Alfred time, and then a line about the government only working for itself, for its own benefit. And there's another line about hollow men entering his home or something. So again, all caveats still standing. I'm not sure under the feudal system that the average serf had many rights back then in King Alfred's time. Freemen were very far and few between, but it's a nice image. There's the only monarch that's called the Great in our land's history. There's the unready and the confused, but only one, the Great. So after another chorus, we get this instrumental break, of which the crowd clearly are loving. And for me, it's feeling very Irish, and it is crying out for some fiddles.
Yeah.
But Frank's strumming away, and he's jigging around on stage with gay abandon. And I'm enjoying this bit a bit more than the early bit. It's fine, the early bit. I don't dislike it or anything, but it's not doing much for me. But this was more interesting. And then, for me, as they say, shit gets more interesting. So there's a few like really weird dissonant notes. And then it was a shock at the time, but I now realize the keyboard player becomes the second drummer.
Mm.
And as we all know the rule, two drummers is always a win. Frank announces to the audience that they're going to sing the end of this one together. While the dual stick merchants pound out the B and the bass underpins it nicely. And he rehearses them a little bit. And then as soon as he's done that, he changes one of the words. I thought that was really funny because he adds in a bit. So stand up for, I mean, even I got this. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for what you own. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for your homes. That's some interesting points there I could raise. But anyway, halfway through this sort of clarion call, the keyboard drummer actually returns to add that piano sound and the whole band fill out. And this section, I have to say, is proper, hair standing up in your neck moment in the whole performance. Naturally, the crowd go ape shit. Who wouldn't? And then, of course, he goes back in his word and he sings a final verse on his own because he said we're going to sing the ending together. And of it, there's a couple. There's a couple in there really sticks out. If a man asks you for your business or your name, tell him to go fuck himself and his friends to do the same, something like that, which I found hilarious. And then that's the end of the song. Yeah, that last bit was a bit sort of sovereign citizen for me. Um, and I think I said in the reaction that this country tends to be more apathy than uprising. I mean, you just look at the general election 2019, after the shit show of the previous 3 years, the great unwashed voted for Mr. Clown Shoes. And he said, if you think that was a shit show, hold my beer.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. So yeah, it was interesting. It made me think this anti-interventionist feeling kind of rose in this country in the 80s when people wanted to sort of keep their own money rather than paying taxes. And don't get me started on the rise of the free market replacing morality with money and balance sheets. But anyway, yeah, just look at care of the elderly, water treatment and sewage, dental services, basic human need for shelter, it's alternative commodities, blah, 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 lecture over. But so it's quite interesting, but his viewpoint and what he's writing from, it does sound so American. It really does. But he's doing it in a British accent. He's relating it to British history, but it's just a really interesting point of view. It's a great performance from Frank and the band. I have to say, it's a great full sound. For my tastes, it really picked up in the midway point onwards from the fiddle less instrumental. And as a side note as well, we get some great shots of the Shepherd Bush Empire because it said it on the title. Looking great. Now, I know it used to be a BBC television theatre for a long time, and I have a strong feeling of going to that place and seeing someone there, but the actual memory of that occasion escapes me, so I can't say for certain. I had some mates who lived in Shepherd's Bush. I visited there very often, and I'm pretty sure we went to that theatre for a gig, but I couldn't tell you who or what. Um, I know it's an iconic venue for live albums in particular, and people like Amy Winehouse and Pearl and Wedding Present and loads. Yeah, this goes on. So it's a great setting. It looked fantastic. The overall sound of this was great as well, and it's a really engaging performance. So yeah, I enjoyed this.
Yeah, for all the reasons that you've listed, I also enjoyed it. On top of kind of like ironic humor in the
Yeah.
whole thing, especially this far out from or this close from our Independence Day over here. It was just all kind of fun to stumble upon because, to be fair, you guys out there in the listening audience, you offer us these songs, and the one who is not going to be charged with reacting to it kind of has to go out and find what iteration we want the other to listen to. So I combed through a couple versions before I found this one, and I was like, oh, this song kind of lends itself to live performance anyway. It's a crowd rouser of a song, which is its intent clearly. So I thought, oh, this is perfect. It's a live performance, and yeah, that definitely added to the whole enjoyment of the tune to see it all unfold and the interaction with the crowd, and just sort of this little snippet of history, not only in what they're talking about, but the music itself sounds from another time, and it is marchy type music, and one that I kind of music that I think really transcends across the pond. Perhaps the first version of music that exchanged so fluidly from one country to the other, because this is the kind of stuff our soldiers likely marched to or drank to in the evenings after the war or whatever, or after battles, and kind of like you said, sort of a morale booster kind of sound to it all. So yeah, I found it enjoyable for all those reasons, and funny to some degree for other reasons. But yes, this was my first listen to it, and I thought that Frank was a really talented musician, and he clearly has a following. Yeah, Mr. Francis Edward Turner was born December 28th, 1981, as he's an English punk and folk singer-songwriter from Meonstoke, Hampshire. Is that Meonstoke? Is that the correct? I'm not butchering that, am I?
It sounds like you are.
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
Meonstoke.
Never heard of it.
Fair. All right. All right. Well, let's
You
just
can, you can say it however you like, because I've never heard of it.
Fair. Okay. He began his career as a vocalist for a post-hardcore band of all genres. The name of that act was Million Dead. He then embarked upon a primarily acoustic-based solo career following the band's split in 2005. In the studio and during live performances, Turner is accompanied by his backing band, the Sleeping Souls, which consists of Ben Lloyd on guitar and mandolin, Terrence Anderson on bass, Matt Nasir on piano and mandolin, and Callum Green on drums. And to date, Turner has released 10 solo albums, 4 rarities compilations, 1 retrospective best of album, and 1 split album and 5 EPs. Turner's 9th studio album, FTHC, was released on the 11th of February 2022 and reached #1 in the UK albums chart in the weeks following its release. So as a child, Turner played piano before teaching himself how to play guitar at the age of 11. He discovered his love for music through seeing an Iron Maiden poster on his friend's bedroom wall, and he convinced his parents to buy him a copy of the album Killers and later a guitar. Turner was educated at Summerfields and subsequently on a scholarship at Eton College, where he studied alongside, of all people, Prince William, who is now I guess next in line, right after your boy Chuck over there. So he's since described his experiences of being at boarding school as traumatic, having led to periods of self-harm and suicidal ideation. Yikes. In 2001, Turner joined London post-hardcore band, the aforementioned Million Dead, at the invitation of the former Knee Jerk drummer Ben Dawson. In 2005, after 4 years and 2 albums, the band announced their split for their reasoning being irreconcilable differences within the band, which I always think is a very funny. I always want to know, what does that mean? What are these irreconcilable differences that you guys have encountered? Y'all are fighting. Just say it. But yeah, they thus rendering the band impossible to continue, according to the quote. Around that time, Turner got a tape with, get ready, because this is the second time I've referenced him in 2 videos, a tape with Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska on it. He later said, that was a really big moment for me, hearing that record in terms of a turnaround in my musical career and taste from post-hardcore punk to what I'm doing now. From 2005 to 2008, Turner released a couple of EPs and his first full-length album, his 2 first full-length albums. Sleep is for the Week, WEEK, so get it in Monday through Friday. That was released in 2007, and Love, Ire, and Song in 2008. During the summer of 2008, Turner made several festival appearances, including sets at the Why Not Festival, 2000 Trees Festival, the Cambridge Folk Festival, Truck, Glastonbury, Jam by the Lake in Durham, and the Reading and Leeds festivals. During his 2008 UK tour for the Love, Ire, and Song album, he became ill with gastroenteritis and was forced to leave the stage in Nottingham halfway through his set. Yikes. All remaining shows, which included Nottingham, Liverpool, and Ireland, were canceled, and the first time that Turner, as a solo artist, had canceled any show in 10 years. He went on to reschedule all canceled shows in January of 2009. Later in 2009, while touring with the Gaslight Anthem, a band that we're both familiar with, Turner began demoing several new songs and announcing his plans to record a new album. The new album, Poetry of the Dead, on which this track features, was produced by Alex Newport. Recording took place in April and May of 2009 at Leader's Farm in Norwich and the producer's own studio, Future Shock, in Brooklyn, New York. Turner was announced as the support act on the Offspring Summer Tour, which he documented his travels with a blog on the British music website NME. And when talking about the support slot, Turner stated, "Smash was one of the first punk records I ever bought, and I'm blown away to even be considered for the shows. From a career point of view, it's almost..." From a career point of view, it's also great. Playing to many thousands of people a night across the states is an opportunity not to be sniffed at. Which, I mean, he's probably right. That's hella exposure, opening himself up to a whole nother demographic and continent, really. On April 28, 2009, Turner signed with Epitaph Records for releases outside of the UK. And Turner's third studio album, Poetry of the Dead, was released on September 7th, 2009, and reached number 36 in the UK album charts. The album's first single, The Road, received the status of hottest record in the world today by BBC Radio 1 DJ Zane Lowe on July 14th, 2009. The track Poetry of the Dead was released as the second single from the album. Unlike Turner's previous solo albums, Poetry of the Dead was rehearsed, arranged, and recorded with his full band. In the album's liners, Turner states, "This album has been more of a collaborative process than on previous efforts. So first and foremost, thanks due to Ben Lloyd, Matt Nasir, Taron Anderson, and Nigel Powell." Metacritic's aggregated score of the album is a 73 out of 100, and Stereo Kill and AllMusic awarded a score of 4 out of 5 stars for the album, and NME gave it an 8 out of 10. In her review of the album for NME, Emily McKay would write, "Turner has a huge grassroots support precisely because of his directness and honesty, and there's a beautiful straightforwardness to Poetry of the Dead that will ring true if you've ever been young, in love, lonely, angry at the world, or just plain happy to be alive." Tori Peterson of punknews.org wrote of the album, "As a whole, the album doesn't reach the heights of its near-perfect predecessor. However, Poetry of the Dead is a very good singer-songwriter offering, and Turner's vocals here are the best we've heard from him yet. If he can find a way to bring his songwriting A-game together with his newfound vocal prowess, his next offering may very well be a masterpiece." So let's get into these lyrics. "Once an honest man could go from sunrise to its set without encountering agents of his state or government. But a sorry cloud of tyranny has fallen across the land, brought on by the hollow men who did not understand that for centuries our forefathers have fought and often died to keep themselves unto themselves, to fight the rising tide. That if in the smallest battles we surrender to the state, we enter in a darkness whence we never shall escape. When they raise their hands up on our lives to possess, to know our souls, to drag us down, we'll resist. Wat Tyler led the people in 1381 to meet the king of Smithfield to issue this demand, that Winchesters should be the only law across the land, the law of old King Alfred's time of free and honest men, because the people then, they understood what we have since forgot, that government will only work for its own benefit, and I'd rather stand up naked against the elements alone than give the hollow men the right to enter my home. When they rise with their hands up, our lives to possess, to know our souls, to drag us down, we'll resist. Stand up, sons of liberty, and fight for what you own. Stand up, for sons of liberty, and fight for your homes." And this repeats itself several times. "So if ever a man should ask you for your business or your name, tell him to go fuck himself. Tell his friends to do the same. Because a man who trade his liberty for a safe and dreamless sleep doesn't deserve the both of them, and never shall he keep." So those sentiments, not necessarily in those same words, have been echoed by some of our forefathers over here. I think Ben Franklin, if I'm not mistaken, is the one most attributed to that quote. So, Sons of Liberty is the most political song of the album, Poetry of the Deed. Frank here states once more his skepticism toward the state, especially when it comes to protecting the freedom and privacy of its constituents. Frank believes in the absolute freedom of the individual. Once an anarchist, he became a libertarian, and God, I know so many libertarians who were anarchists when they were young, and then evolved into libertarians, and it's usually their own brand of libertarianism. It's not, all it takes is a few questions, and then they're like, well, you know, this and that. It's like, okay, all right, you're not exactly a libertarian. But yes, so he would be quoted in The Guardian in 2003 as saying, "Look, I'm a classical liberal. I like John Stuart Mill and Adam Smith, and most of all, Benjamin Franklin and Jefferson. That is my politics. As television's favorite libertarian, Ron Swanson of NBC's Park and Recreation, would remind us, libertarianism is about the freedom of individuals and should never be defined by either label liberal or conservative. That sounds all good and everything. But unfortunately, and I don't know if he realizes this, there's probably a lot of people listening to this song that aren't taking into consideration that level of nuance. So I'll just kind of leave it there, you know what I mean? I just think it's funny when you get libertarians going, and I don't want, to go off on a tangent or anything, and their first thing is like, taxation is, theft, and meanwhile, the moment their house catches on fire, or some awful deed is performed against them by a criminal or something like that, they want to know where the firemen are, or where were the police in this instance. I get social libertarianism when it comes to the individuals being, their own people, and if you want to, whoever you sleep with behind your own doors is up to you, and what you do here and there is up to you. But when it comes to the fiscal aspect of it, I just find it a bit head scratching.
Yes, you're quite right, and you can go even further. These people are quite happy to withhold their money because they will isolate certain areas of society who are often villainized. I don't want to pay for their children. I
Yeah.
don't want to pay for that person sitting at home unemployed. That was particular in the late 80s. In this country, it's the rise of home ownership has, had various, maybe unseen consequences, a breakdown of society in terms of a fabric of it connecting people, in terms of home into a commodity, and then this circle of debt, which you will then spend the rest of your life, fulfilling.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you need care because you're old and infirm, you sell your life savings to pay for that as well.
Mhm.
And I'm involved in it as well, unfortunately. So there's all that. But yeah, even who's going to take care of their sewage?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
folks who empty their bins.
Yeah. Who's going to repair that bridge that connects their town to the one over? You know what I mean? And all
It's
that
a
stuff.
societal contract, and that is not just about the money in your bank, but is also about the safety of your home and your family, and the future of your family as well. And you cannot buy all these things with money. If you want to drop out of society, that's fine, but be prepared to defend your home against the rampaging hooligans who want to perhaps take it apart.
Yeah, and
Uh,
over here, that to some degree is a viable option because of the
yeah,
the
space.
proliferation of guns. But you don't have a fucking fire engine or a high power hose that is an endless supply of water. So you might be able to defend yourself against a robber, but when your house burns down, I don't want to hear shit from you. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. And it just seems to be like really low hanging fruit to just say, get rid of it all, and to not dig down deep into the unfairness or of taxation, and who should be taxed correctly, and to what degree, and for what reasons, because that requires thought and discourse and a struggle that people just don't want to have. You know what I mean? It's just easier for them to go, well, I've got my guns and I've got my four walls and a roof and I want to keep it that way. And well, that kind of stops the conversation right there for me. So
Yeah, that's sort of blanking out of everything else, the other.
yeah.
It's along the same lines as racism. It's along the same lines as the way you treat people of a different sex or whatever, the way you treat people who are perhaps older or younger than you or anything different whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then trying to equate all of the values and the things that are important in life into a spreadsheet, monetary value is just, you're missing the whole fucking point of life. But Frank may have not meant any of that.
I don't think, and I don't think Frank did. To be completely fair, I firmly give Frank the benefit of the doubt, but it's the people who I fear would flock to this for all the wrong reasons. Really, you know what I mean? I'm sure Frank's heart was in the right place.
But like I said, in this country, people may just say, "Oh, I don't want to do that," and then they do.
Yeah,
It's that
yeah.
we don't really get people holed up in the wilds of Lincolnshire with their guns saying, "I do not recognise the federal government." It doesn't really happen. They
Damn,
get a polite the polite letter from the council, and they all behave. You know, it's
That sounded like exactly how I'd imagine someone in Lincolnshire sounding too, by the way. That was a spot on impression. Yeah, no, in all honesty, this was I really enjoyed the performance and the song
great
itself.
performance.
Yeah.
He's got charisma, hasn't he, as well? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So Neil, thank you so much for offering this up. I really enjoyed giving this a listen. I'm sure, John clearly did as well. Great performance. So thanks a lot, Neil. Appreciate you offering this up. And it opened up some good dialogue and discussion too. Everybody out there in the listening audience, we do this every Friday. So if you've got a song in mind or thoughts about this one, drop them in the comments field below. We will be sure to log any entries for future Fridays, and interact with any reactions or feelings about the track that we did here today. Also, if you're new here, please think about liking, sharing, and subscribing. We're trying to grow the channel and cannot do that without you. And we really do appreciate that. And hopefully John and I will see all of y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.